You're going to record this, so this panel we're going to be talking about pursuing credibility through 4 different methods: partnerships, articulation agreements, peer reviews, and through accreditation. Through state licensure. We're going to talk about accreditation tomorrow with Dr. Steve and some of the ups and downs of that, so that'll be more in-depth form tomorrow on accreditation. What I wanted to do is, first of all, direct you in your packet to our ACA Schools membership. If you'll open up your little folder there's a couple things I'm going to be referring to during this time. But there's an ACA Schools membership. This is the purpose of the ACA membership. And there's 2 levels of membership, one for your schools or one for you as an individual. You can read the one that applies to you as a professional or as a school. I've got a little overall presentation I want to do here real quickly as an introduction to our panel. I'm going to give you an overview of ACEA, and then I'm going to talk about some of the different issues here. First of all, we just had our executive council. The ACEA team is here, and our executive council is Ken and Drew and Tim and Ian, who's Ken Malimin, Tim Hamon, Drew Brown, and Ian Bond. Ian Bond is in China right now having to do a graduation and wasn't able to get back in time. And then Brian Souders, the Vice President, Executive Vice President, and President. Then we have, beyond that, we have an expanding Apostolic Council with Dr. Peter, who is always emeritus and always welcome as part of the council. Stan DeCoven, David, who am I thinking, what's his name? Is it David? David Carey. But we've just asked Dave Carey to come on to the Executive Council. So he just this year has moved into the Executive Council, so we'll make an adjustment on that slide. And then Ralph Farida, Freddie from Indonesia, and then Sherrill Piscopo, who's right here. And Ralph is with WLI, wasn't able to come because there are meetings next week and it's back-to-back for them financially. So we've also just recently asked for Dr. Minor Vargas to join our Apostolic Council. So I'd like for you to welcome Dr. Vargas. So that makes up the team, and let's go on to the next slide there real quickly. I wanted to just let you know, as far as an overview of ACEA, the ACEA stands for the Academic Council for Educational Accountability. Now, there's membership requirements to be a part of the Academic Council for Educational Accountability. Those membership requirements basically come down to a peer review that you choose. It's a volunteer peer review that you choose 2 people from among the Apostolic Council and then invite them in to do your peer review for 2 days. We'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow. But then with a 2-day peer review, once you've responded to the recommendations, you don't have to do the recommendations, but you have to respond to each one. And once you've responded, then you're qualified to be a member of the Academic Council for Educational Accountability. For 7 years, your membership will be in good standing as long as you do attend the ACEA summits. Now, these summits are something that's required only for those who are peer-reviewed schools. And that's why Dr. Tice is here representing Summit, and his wife is representing Focus, because they're representing 2 schools, as Dr. Tim is with Vision and with CI. So we have to have representation here from your school in order for your school to remain qualified for those 7 years. Then there's also credibility we have credibility through accountability, but we also have credibility through association, which Dr. Vargas did a great job presenting a minute ago. And that's the Association of Christian Educators and Administrators. So everybody can come in at that level, either as an individual or as a school member. And if you apply, you can apply to just be an associate of ACEA. If you want to be a member of the Academic Council, then you tell us at the beginning, and then you have 3 years before you actually do your peer review. You have 3 years with it to do that. So whichever track you choose, if you choose to come in to get the certificate from the Academic Council for Educational Accountability, that's wonderful. Then you have 3 years to develop the relationships before you invite 2 people in. So that you can come in as an associate and change your mind later and choose to do your peer review. You can come in as an associate as a school, or you can come in as an associate as a professional. So credibility through association, credibility through accountability, your choice at the beginning. That's what Acea is offering, peer review. Here's the credibility through association. You can just read that. I don't want to go through that very, very quickly. We provide a professional society that's made up of individuals and schools, educating educators and administrators to excel personally and increasing the competency of school officials. And then the value of that membership, you can see there, it's a resume builder. As you can see, there's personal growth through messages like Brian and Ken have brought here today. Relationships with like-minded folks, fresh ideas for personal growth, access to the back pages of the website, and then of course attendance at the summit is available to all professionals. And then real quickly here, this is the value of your school being a member of the Association of Christian Educators, is that your school director and spouse are received into the professional society. So as a school, the Carries, the Word of Life, is part of the Association of Christian Educators and Administrators. Not only that, but David and his wife are both admitted to the association as professionals without any further cost. So you have 3 certificates that go out yearly, and then any others on your staff are able to join at $95 per year, as David Jr. is. He's an associate member, and as is Catherine. So schools are listed on the website as members, associates of the Acea, and they have access to all of the summits in the back pages. Now, that's the value of school membership. Now, the next one is credibility through accountability. That's where we have it's distinguished as a peer review. And it's voluntary, it's an invited peer review. You select 2 peers for 2 days, choose from the recommendations, and then you're a member in good standing for 7 years. It requires attendance to the public meeting. There you go. And then the value is, of course, on all your media, you can put the Academic Council for Educational Accountability that you're a member in good standing on all your school media. The director and the spouse are received as professionals into the society. 3 certificates a year from January 1st to December 31st is the membership dues are due by January 1st. And then your schools are listed, the back page of the website, etc. So, so go to acea-schools.org, and you can apply if you'd like to do that. So that's just a real quick overview for the website for people to be able to see what Acea does. And now we want to kind of go into our panel discussion and talk a little bit about how to pursue credibility. Because all of us, whenever we do any program at any school, pursue credibility. Now some people have signs and wonders and miracles happening in there, and that provides credibility all that they want. Others are concerned that if we invite someone to come to our school supernatural, we may still want to have some other credential that we can explain to the parents that we are a member in good standing with Acea, or a member in good standing with this accrediting association, or with this association of schools, etc. and so on. So other sources of credibility are desired. Now, here's what I want to tell you. There's 4 basic ways of getting credibility that has substance. The first one is being accredited through an agency that is registered with the Department of Education, the DOE. So the Department of Education qualifies an accrediting agency to qualify you as an accredited school or training program. Now, that's where an external standard is applied to your school training program, and you have to meet the external standard before you get accredited by that DOE-approved accrediting agency. The value of that is that you qualify for school loans and for grants and for et cetera and so on. So there are some benefits for those who go through the accreditation process. But as you will find out tomorrow when Dr. Steve Crowther comes, he's going to talk about that can be a very expensive proposal, and there can be lots of ups and downs, and it can be done in a streamlined way, which he did, and he's going to tell you about tomorrow. But even with the streamline, there's also some demands that are made that will shape you and morph you for your future, and you have to be ready for that. So we are not anti-accreditation. We have schools that are accredited by the DOE-approved accrediting agency. So we're supportive of accreditation. However, it doesn't fit everyone, and therefore we want to provide some other creative alternatives. The second kind of accreditation is with groups that are not DOE approved accrediting associations. Unfortunately, they still use the same word accredited, but because it's not accredited through a DOE approved accredited association, people get confused. So on their media, they'll say, we're accredited with, and here's the name of this organization, and that organization basically says, we're going to accredit you by taking an external standard of requirements and putting it on your school. And if you meet our external standards, then we will accredit you. Now, we will say that you're accredited, but our accreditation is not recognized by the Department of Education. But you're accredited, and you can put that sweet little word on your media, and that will give parents some sort of pseudo comfort. I won't say false comfort. I'll just say pseudo comfort. There's a third way that people get an accreditation, and it's through what some people call a paper mill. That is, there are really no external requirements. You just send in money to a paper mill, and they put out something that says you are accredited with this organization. And so that accreditation even weakens a little bit more the accreditation word. And so there's a lot of confusion out there when we use the word accredited. What we in ACA do not want to do is we do not want to be known as an accrediting agency, because we are not. And we don't want to be pretending to be that. We provide credibility, but not accreditation. We provide credibility through association, and we provide credibility through accountability. Our source of credibility is by association when you come to be a part of the Association of Christian Educators and Administrators. But we have a higher level of credibility that we offer if you choose to do a peer review. An invited peer review provides for you an ability to be able to be a member of the Academic Council for Educational Accountability. So that is a service that we provide. Tim Hamon is in charge of the national peer reviews. Drew Brown is in charge of the international peer reviews. If you choose to do that right at the beginning, you let us know. We'll be preparing for your peer review within 3 years, whenever you're ready. It can be done in 2 months after you submit your application, or it can be done in 3 years after your application. And we can go through the peer review with you here in the United States or around the world. So however we can serve you in that way. But in the end, what you get is not a certificate that says that you are accredited. It says that you are a member in good standing. You want to pull yours out there, Brian? It says that you are a member in good standing with ACEA. And if you're at the associate level, then it says you're a member in good standing with the Association of Christian Educators and Administrators. It's in there. Yeah, right there. All right. So this is his personal one, Brian Souter, the ACA certificate. And this one is for Dove Leadership School. And so this says 2013. That's why we go from January 1st to December 31st each year. So this can be on your wall December the 2nd if you pay beforehand. In fact, if you pay before just January 1st, you get a $45 discount. So it's $250 instead of $295 for the membership dues. So anyways, we'll send this to you, and you can have this displayed on your wall the whole year through. Now, we do not want you to present ACA as an accrediting association, but as a creative alternative to accreditation through accountability. Excuse me, I said it wrong, didn't I? A creative alternative to accreditation by providing credibility through accountability. Thank you. So, credibility through accountability. And so you choose when you want to invite the peer review. So I'm going to talk a little bit about peer reviews, and then I'm going to introduce our panel here, and they're going to each take a few moments. A peer review is something that we're going to break down in detail tomorrow. Tomorrow we will have a workshop on how to do a peer review. If you want to do that, then you can come be a part of my workshop, and I'll be giving you the details of how to do a peer review and design one for your school. The difference for ACEA is we do not impose an external standard upon your school. We look for you to provide the internal standard of what you have said that you wanted to accomplish. And all we do when we come in for 2 days is look at how you're accomplishing what it is that you tell students you're going to accomplish. And we hold you accountable for your internal standard, not an external standard. Which means that if you tell a student that you're going to equip them to be able to get their education degree, and then, as Drew told the story earlier today, the girl gets to the end of her 4-year degree and she finds out that her education degree won't get her a job because there was not a measure of integrity for that school or that training program. What we would do is we would come in and we would look at your internal standards, your internal vision and goals, and find out how you're achieving those and if you're staying true to those. What we hold you accountable to is what your internal standards are, not an external standard. So that's why Acea is a creative alternative. We provide training for you to be able to get to your internal standards. We provide mentorship. We're going to provide the webinars, and we provide the opportunity for you to choose your peers who will come in and do the 2-day peer review. It's something that you design with those 2 peer reviewers. You design the peer review, you design, it's 2 days, you design what it is that's going to happen during those 2 days. It can be 3 days, it can be more than 2 peer reviewers, but they're going to work with you to design that particular peer review. So we will talk more in detail about that tomorrow in my workshop. We're also going to have 2 other workshops tomorrow. We're going to have one on developing partnerships and one on developing articulation agreements. Now, we've said that there are 4 ways that people look for credibility in relation to accreditation. Through the DOE approved accreditors, through the non-DOE accreditors, through the paper mill accreditors, and through Acea, with invited peer reviews that result in credibility through accountability. Good? So that's my little session. And next I want to introduce to you Sherrill Piscopo. She's on the Apostolic Council with us. And she also has been a brilliant educator in the state of Michigan. And she has been very savvy and very aware of what it takes to be able to do a school within the state of Michigan and to be able to attend to state licensure issues. Because sometimes you don't have to be an approved, accredited association with the federal government. You can just do it on a state level. And so what she has found out is how to be able to stay qualified with the state in order for her to be able to accomplish her vision for her school destiny. So Sherrill, thank you for being here. She's a brilliant educator and a wife of a wonderful man that everybody knows and loves, and the pastors of Michigan. You've been there doing the school for 17 years? Yeah. All right.
All right. When we begin to talk about credibility, credibility comes too from the way people see you, the public sees you. And part of the public, of course, is sometimes the officials in the state you live in. And so credibility comes when the State Department sees you seeking to comply with what they're asking of you in your state. All states, and I want to say this because it's really important, every state has requirements. They are different in every state, but they all have some requirements. A lot of times what has occurred in churches and in ministries is we stick our head in the ground and say, well, I don't know, so I'm not going to find out either. But the burden of proof for licensure is on you as an educator, as the head of a school. It's not on them at the state level. They may not know you exist. You might think, well, that's good. Not if they find out and you've been operating and doing it unlawfully. So it's really key. When you decide you want to have a school, it's your responsibility to call the state and find out the state you live in and say, what's required for me to have a school? A lot of times, pastors and educators in the church level, the one lie that I hear all the time that they believe is, well, I'm teaching the Bible, so that has nothing to do with the state, and they have no jurisdiction because there's separation of church and state. Not true. Not true at all. You can be teaching how to plant birdseed. It doesn't matter. If you are going to start a school in your state, and you're going to call it a school, or you even want to call it an institute, you have to, don't call it a college, because they will jump on that. You have to find out what's required to do that. We began to see that, I think when I was part of the first ones that came to the very first meeting for Acea, and I believe Ken Malimin spoke on some issues like that. And at that time, there were several pastors or leaders in that meeting, and they were all saying, well, we don't want the state involved in what we're doing. The minute you go to that level, they're going to get involved and tell you what to preach and teach. And so I went home with that thought in mind that I needed to check out, was there a requirement? Because in Michigan, I can't tell you how many pastors, everybody's got a Bible Institute, everybody's got a school, but what I came to discover is I was the only one that was licensed. When we went for licensing, I take that back, there was one other one, Bethesda, which is a prominent church in Michigan. It was the church I grew up in, but they didn't start a school till much later after I had gone on. And so we were the only two licensed in the state of Michigan. Yet I could tell you there's Bible colleges and schools and institutes advertising everywhere. So we went about the process of finding out in our state, what does it have, what do we have to do? I want to say that it's very important you find out, because when we begin to look at credibility and the pros and cons of pursuing credibility, you don't have a choice in this matter. Licensing in your state might be absolutely the only way. It's the law. How many of you ever heard that seatbelt commercial? Click it. It's the law. It's the law in most states in the United States. You have to be licensed to operate any school, any institute. So, and what I began to find is, like Peter talked about making sure that you get a good family attorney. It's always excellent to have a ministry attorney. On our part, we found out it was good to have, we have a ministry attorney, we also have a network attorney, and we have an attorney for our school. You have to get someone that knows the laws about education in your state. I found that most attorneys in our state didn't have a clue what governed education. So I would ask him, can you represent? No, I can't represent you, Sherrill. So I found one, and he's prominent around the nation. He knows the law. It's really key. So, and what I found is when we went for licensing, they loved us at the state level because we were honest. We came forward, we said, we want to do a school. They even asked me, they said, will you tell us all the schools that aren't licensed in the churches? I said, no, I won't do that. I said, that's your job. You go hunt it down. And they said, we don't have the people to do that. I said, not my problem. And so, they're on it. One of the things I began to notice is watch what you put on websites. They're hunting down websites like crazy. You might say, well, how can they do that? They find every little buzzword in the Christian community, and they're using them, going on the website just to see what are you putting on your website. The minute you say licensed, or the minute you say we offer a Bible Institute, I found out legally those are words you cannot use unless you're licensed. So be careful. If you have a website and your school's on it, be careful of the wording. Every school, we found out we could do, you have to work with the attorney. I had to work with the attorney to find out how can I put one of our schools in Pastor Smith's church, because he wants to educate his people. So I found out that what they're really interested in is the finances, because they get money for every student that comes through your program. So I found creative ways. You might say, well, that's a loophole. I don't care what it is, as long as it's legal and as long as it, is okay and I can do this, that was fine. So you have to work with what you have. One of our schools, the minute they found out this wasn't one of our schools, this was a school that I warned the pastor, he came to me, he said, I'm not doing that because, I'm not having the state come in and tell me. I said, do what you want, you know. I want to say this, in 17 years of operating a school, the state has never come in one time and told me I can't teach something or what to teach. That has never been the issue. They are not interested so much in your curriculum, except does it line up, is it listed properly? They want to know what you're teaching, but they have never come in and said, you can't teach this, you can't teach this. So that's been my experience. Now, I don't know if anyone here can say for their state it's different, but in Michigan, and I've also worked with some of the schools in Ohio and Indiana, we've never had that. They've never come in to say, you know, you can't teach this. So, but what they do say is you can't use certain buzzwords like institute, college, university. You can use school, you know, unless you're licensed. And so this pastor didn't listen. The attorney general came down, and that's big. He got a letter. The attorney general was going to prosecute, was going to heavily fine them, and the pastor could do some jail time if they wanted to get ugly. So we just, you know, we worked with him to get everything licensed and up, you know, on top, and that worked out. But we have to be aware. We have to be as harmless as doves, but as wise as serpents. Isn't that true? In Michigan, we found this was one of the reasons why a lot of schools, at least in Michigan, don't want to license. It's costly. It's not cheap. One of the churches that had a rather predominant school, and they weren't licensed, but they were charging their people $2,500 to go through the program. They had to shut it down because now the pastor was going to run for federal office, and that couldn't be in their background if they came in and investigated and found he was operating a school illegally. So they shut it down. In fact, a lot of their students came to Destiny, to our place, because they wanted to go to school. The interesting thing was all of his students came, and I think it was something like what David brought up earlier today about, look, you know, we'll give you a degree and yada yada. Well, a lot of his students thought they were all getting, you know, university level certificates, degrees, whatever. So they were really upset when they came to our place. We told them, none of your stuff really transfers to us because we're a licensed organization, and they weren't. People were saying, well, can't you just take the credit? Can't you just give them credit? No, you can't, not when you're licensed, because the state works on clock hours, time in the classroom, time out of the classroom. It's all organized. So, you know, when you're not licensed and you're supposed to be licensed, it puts it in a very precarious position. Now, articulation agreements, and I think these guys are going to talk about that, that helps because you can agree to something between establishments. But in Michigan, you have to have a bond so that the student is protected. I had to find an insurance company that would write a bond for that has school bonds. So that was an annual fee of $400 to $500. The licensing process to renew each year, we found it was by student. So my renewal fees are anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 to $2,500 a year. That's got to be paid every year. You have to keep good records because those transcripts are important. You can't just say, well, Susie did okay, we'll just give her the A and she gets the grade. You can't do that because those transcripts have to be there forever. If I were to close Destiny down, I would have to take every bit of the transcripts and turn them over to the state so that those folks could get credit if they go to another licensed school for transfer. We are not a university, we are not a college, although we look at it as a Bible college. We look at it as a university level study because we can do that. And that again, Florida is different than Michigan. So there were things we could do in Florida we couldn't do in Michigan. But in Michigan, we're not recognized. We're recognized as a proprietary school doing vocational work. That's different than most others. They require class hours, hands-on. The students can call the state of Michigan if they have a legitimate complaint and file a complaint against us. The state will call me and say, hey, and again, relationship brings credibility. I know those folks down at the state. I feel like they birthed me in some respects because they walked it through with me every step of the way. But it's on a first name basis. It helps. They know I'm trying to do what they require. So they'll call and say, hey, Sherrill, yada, 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 this happened. Okay, what do I got to do? Well, this student called, but they sound like a whack job, so what do you want us to do? I said, well, who is it? So then I'll investigate. If they were a real pain to work with, some of them, they want to come to school, but they don't want to pay their bill. And they think that, the Lord spoke to them. I'm just supposed to give it to them for free. Okay. Not working. Okay. So I'm on that kind of relationship, though, with the state where they'll work with me. One of the things the state does, too, is they come in. They want to look at your building. They want to look at your facility. They want to see, is it a safe place? Is it a place where students can come and not feel like the building is going to crash around them? And that's key. Because in Michigan, especially in the inner city, there's not too many facilities that are okay to meet in. They're not kept to code. Pastors can't afford it. So they come to look at all that stuff. Watch what you put on the website. That's key. Okay. We have developed curriculums. We've had to stay in the main, we've had to stay with the times. We developed a business curriculum that a lot of students are excited about, but we make it clear to them, you can't walk out of here and go to GM, for example, and secure a big position because you have a business, certificate from Destiny. However, your Destiny certificate might put you in a position where your employer likes you, sees what you're doing is good, and wants to advance you. I had, most recently, one of our business students took their diploma from Destiny. They work at GM, they're engineers at GM. They showed their superiors, they applied for a position of advancement. They showed him, he showed him his, certificates and his studies. The superior looked at the curriculum and said, you're studying everything for leadership that you would take at another level anyway. Gave him a stamp of approval, gave him a $20,000 increase in his pay. I mean, it's okay with me if it works for him. But on the other side of the coin, he's never told, you're guaranteed you're going to get a promotion with this certificate. So you got to be really clear with the people. You got to say it. There are times too where we've said it, and we've said it, and we've said it. They walk out and I'm going to apply. I said, go apply for it. God will give you favor. But don't tell them that we're saying you got a degree from this and you're qualified. That's not true. I don't know how many times you can say it. It's like 10 different ways you can say it, but we keep pounding it. We make it part of our program. The minute they come in, we do an orientation, and it's part of the program. I just want to close with the toughest states I have found, and the attorney was informing me the other day. Michigan is awful. Ohio, Indiana. He was saying, and I'm not sure about this, Washington, D.C., Kansas, Connecticut, and Tennessee is tough. I don't know how true that is. I was speaking with somebody in Tennessee recently. They said, well, Norval Hayes, he has his school in Tennessee. He was never licensed. And then somebody else popped up and said, well, Norval Hayes was close to the governor and started it 40,000 years ago before they licensed, so they've never touched him. I don't know. So, that's great for Norval. It worked. Amen? Praise God. Relationship credibility. Yeah, very good.
Sure, excellent job.
Wow. Don't you admire her integrity?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It gives you credibility when you're willing to play by the rules. Maybe to tag on that, our state is different. So about almost half of the 50 states have a provision for religious schools that do not have to be licensed. They can get an exempt status, meaning you're exempt from state licensure because they recognize the First Amendment problem of if the government tries to regulate the training of ministers, that's a de facto regulating the religion, and which is a First Amendment issue. So about half of the states have been convinced of that enough that they will allow religious institutions to either choose to be licensed if they want to, which many do, and you have to be accredited by a DOE agency, you have to be licensed by your state. But for those who don't want that and want to maintain their religious freedom, but still call it a school and, award only religious awards, degrees, diplomas, etc. The rules vary from state to state, but I've been involved in this in a few states now. I wrote most of the laws in Oregon, so we get to do what we want there. But about half the states. So you need to know what kind of a state you're in and what your options are. If you're in a state like Sherrill, where your only option to function with any sense of legitimacy, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. If Caesar says, we want to protect the citizens of our state from fraudulent education, and we don't want religion to be the guise for fraudulent education, we don't want degree mills, we don't want the Church of Monday Night Football awarding doctorate degrees or whatever, they want to, most of their motivation is to protect the citizens of their state from fraudulent activity or substandard activity. That's most of their motivation, which is noble. But they, like she just said, every state has their own way of regulating. And some say you can use institute, but you can't use college. Others will say we don't want you using institute. Some will say you can't use the word credits, but you can use the word units. And some will say no, we don't like. So you got to know your state is the bottom line of I think what we're both saying, because you may have the freedom to fight. If you're in Idaho, I just found out because we started an extension in Idaho. If you're doing something religious, they don't think any of their laws apply to you. You don't even have to get an exemption. So my person in Oregon said, "Oh, Idaho's not an exempt state." I flew over and talked to the head guy. Well, I happened to have a pastor who had, his best friend was the treasurer of the state, so he walked me, since he controls the budget of the Department of Education, he just walked me across the street and said, "Would you talk to this guy?" I was like, "Yeah, we'll talk to him." A lot of times it's who you know. But he said, well, no, we don't even have an exemption because you don't need to be exempt, because of the way we interpret our own laws is that if you're offering a religious diploma or degree of some kind, we can't regulate you. So they are an exempt state, but they don't have an exemption. They won't even talk to you. There's nothing to apply for. Some states you apply for an exemption, you can get it. Other states, there's no exemption possible. We only have about half the states that do that. So I think the bottom line of what we're trying to say here is know your state, know what the rules are, know what your options are. If you want to get a license from the state, that will give you another level of credibility than exemption will, unless you're in Oregon. We wrote all the privileges of licensure into the exemption. So employers in Oregon are required to respect our degree from our Bible college, even though we're not licensed by the state, because I said to the state, I don't want you to give me permission to do what God's called me to do, and I think the First Amendment protects me, and the legislature voted unanimously okay. Even though the education guy was totally opposed to it, but I beat him in the legislature, so now he's my friend. So know your states, bottom line. I think you wanted me, though, to talk about...
yeah, you're going to talk about articulation?
Articulation agreements, okay. Often if you have typical college-age young people in your program, their parents are concerned that the time and money that is being spent to be in your program, what does that get them, Because, parents are concerned about young adults hurrying up and get an education, to get a job so that you can take care of your parents when they're old, everybody has that concern. So there's a concern of like, okay, well, can you take these credits anywhere else? So before we did all the stuff with the state I just described, and before we could say, okay, before we could offer degrees in Oregon, we approached a Christian college not far from us and said, would you do an experiment? Would you provisionally accept I forget how many we asked, 8 or 10 of our students to attend your college. And would you tell them that you will accept credits from our school based on their performance? So they know they're not being guaranteed. We're going to make them guinea pigs, have a first group go through. And then if so, then would you write us a letter saying that our students can take the courses and credits they've taken from us and transfer to your fully accredited institution to pursue some other kind of career path or degree? And so they know that they could come to us and then take those credits on to you and not have kind of wasted their time and money coming to our school to get a legitimate degree. This is before we offered degrees. So the president said, yeah, we'll give it a try. So we did it we asked for 1 year, we did it for 2 years. And I still have a copy of the letter. This is back in 1986. He wrote a letter saying, your students have performed better than any other block of students we have. Could we please come to your campus and recruit?
Whoa.
Wow.
So he wrote us our first what an articulation is a letter of agreement between one institution and another, establishing the boundaries of transferring credits. And there's no real perfect transfer. I mean, you can transfer from the University of Oregon to Oregon State University, both run out of the same government office, and you lose credits in the transfer. So there's usually prescribed boundaries for that. And so an articulation then would detail that. So then we developed an articulation with that college, a Christian-based college. A number of students started going there and getting a variety of kinds of degrees for various occupations. Then we decided, well, why not get another one? And then we found it helped us with other agencies, whether it's the veterans for veterans benefits, which we have for a school, or back then Department of Justice, now Homeland Security, to have international students come on student visas. Having these kind of agreements then really help for those kind of opportunities. So now we've developed a number of those with both private and public institutions. And I think the way it has happened for us has been God just kind of opened doors along the way. And it's a good old boy system. So if you know somebody, and then that gives you credibility with who they know. And so the one school, then another Christian college in town said, well, we'd like to have your students too. We want the business. So they approached us, actually, and we did an articulation with them. Now we've had dozens of students go through there because they have some other programs the other one doesn't. Then what I thought the best one we could get would be the largest university in Oregon is Portland State University. And so I thought if we could get an articulation with them, then maybe schools in other states, would as well. So happened to know somebody in the legislature. He's actually a member of our church, and then he became head of the Ways and Means Committee for our state. So I said, don't you have something to do with the budget for Portland State? He says, well, yeah, I control their money. I said, could you get me a meeting with the president of Portland State? They had tens of thousands of students. And he said, yeah. So he calls me back. He says, we're having breakfast next Tuesday. Can you come? I said, sure. We go down to a hotel downtown Portland. So I had breakfast with the president of Portland State. Well, God will often help you with things like this. And I had prayer people praying for this, like, God, give us an open door. Turns out the president, who's as liberal as they come at that time, her main assistant was a single mom whose daughter had come to our school for 1 year. I didn't know this. I didn't know it at all. So I'm having breakfast, and she's being very cordial to me because the guy who runs her money is, I'm his friend, And she says, oh yes, I've heard of your school. I'm thinking, how? And she said, my assistant, her daughter came to your school, and you did wonders for her, and she was so worried about her daughter, and she said, and her daughter and she didn't know what word to use. She said, she got centered at your school. I would say she got saved, And so she says, yeah. And so she sent out the vice provost of academic affairs. He visited our campus, walked around for 10 minutes, said, my boss wants me to do this. Had a good conversation with him. So we have a blank check letter from Portland State University saying they'll accept all of our credits. We've had music students go back and forth. So now our experience is that schools in other states that we don't, because we have students come from all over, so schools in other states that we don't have articulations with will often accept our credits once they know that Portland State does, because they want the business too. So recently, we've had students in recent years transfer to Baylor here in Texas, to Arizona State, to Pittsburgh State, to a variety of schools anyway, and we don't have articulations with them. So the idea is, if you get one, then you piggyback that on a school that's a friend of that school, you know, because the schools want the business. And they know that if they'll accept a few credits from you, they'll get their $60,000 out of that student, or at least from the government for that student to go there. So you have leverage if you have something they view as being credible. Is that what you wanted me to
Absolutely.
talk about?
And just a quick one. Tomorrow, Ken's going to be doing a workshop on how to develop an articulation agreement, some things to think about, what to do, what not to do. How many of you have established an articulation agreement before with an organization? 1, 2, 3, okay, 4, okay. All right, excellent. And how many of you would like to maybe look into this and check into it? You see the value of it? It's brilliant. And so that's why we have these kinds of workshops at ACEA, so you can come and at least get your feet on the ground, down in the muck and the mire, and start getting some traction and say, okay, at least I know enough now to get started. And we'll do whatever we can. I mean, Ken's available for mentoring. If you say, you know, I'm kind of stuck on this one point because we were establishing this articulation agreement and then they came back with this and I don't know quite what to do, I think Ken would be willing to take a call from you as part of ACEA, as part of our exec council, to kind of say, we'll mentor you through as best we can to the next step. We can't be legal counsel or anything of that nature, but just a consult. I just volunteered you, is that okay? Okay.
There's 4 different kinds.
Oh.
There's 4 different kinds that we've done that have worked in different situations. So if you want that tomorrow, we could go more specifically into that.
Now partnerships, and Ted has been great at doing this with SPAN and et cetera. We'll take about 10 minutes or so. And
I can probably do it in less. Partnerships is a whole different approach to what we've been talking about, which, by the way, I'm from Florida. Our state, we have an exemption. We have licensure and an exemption, but the requirement is you have to do everything with religious modifiers. So you can have a bachelor's, not a bachelor of arts, you can have a bachelor of religious arts, or some word that means religious. Obviously, yeah, theology or Christian or something like that. So as long as you put in all the modifiers, you can do just about anything through the exemption. But if you don't put the modifiers in, you can't do anything through the exemption. So again, every state has its own quirks and rules. So we're talking about partnerships. So one way to not have to write articulation agreements is to partner with a school that already has articulation agreements or other forms of credibility. So in my case, it all happened here at ACEA. I guess in this case it would be ACEA Harmony, because it was a matching situation. And so, thank you. And so Stan DeKoven, who's the head of Vision International University, and myself met basically through ACEA. We kind of known each other vaguely in the past. Our schools had developed along similar timelines, and so we were kind of, you kind of know the other people in the area. But his school's based in California, our school's based in Florida. We hadn't really overlapped too much, but when we both came to ACEA, got to know each other. We have a somewhat similar humor style. Mine's better, but it's in a similar way. And we struck up a friendship, learned about each other's schools. We had a lot of things in common. But what we didn't have in common was he was pursuing these issues, accreditation. In fact, one thing we didn't talk about is international accreditation. He's accredited through the Australian Accrediting Association, which is very strong globally. And they're pursuing accreditation through the South African accreditation societies, and they're also very strong globally. So there's outside the U.S. opportunities. Obviously, it's not DOE because it's not the U.S., but these are recognizable around the world and somewhat in the States as well. The U.S. is pretty snobbish about this whole situation, so they don't receive much from outside the country. So he's pursuing all these things, putting a lot of time and energy into it. It's still the main focus of Vision is distance education and church-based programs, whereas Christian International, it had become less important to us. We'd established a network of churches. We were doing a lot of in-church training of the prophetic and things we're well known for now. And so the distance education portion had sort of been sidelined a little bit by these other priorities. So when I saw what he was doing and had all the technology and the current way of delivery, was pursuing all the academics, the accreditation issues, all the licensing issues, obviously in California, but in other ways as well. And we had curriculum he liked. We have curriculum of prophetic and apostolic and marketplace ministries and all these kinds of things that he wanted to develop and hadn't had time to do. And so it's kind of like building a relationship. First there was some mutual attraction, and then there was a bit of a courtship, and finally we made a commitment, and now we have a working relationship. And we'll talk about how that worked, the details at the workshop tomorrow. If you want to know the ins and outs of how it worked and what didn't work and how we got through the rough parts. But that's basically what happened. He took advantage of our expertise in certain areas, and we took advantage of his technology and his pursuit of some of these academic accrediting issues. And between us, we each got our needs met so that we could both continue with each of our vision. His is named Vision, but it was still a vision. And so now all of our distance education is being handled through Vision University. And we still do in-church training and not-for-credit activity. And we still provide curriculum and help him with faculty and other issues. So those two things marry together, and is moving along very well.
Thank you, Tim. And tomorrow, Tim will be doing the partnership workshop. Ken will be doing an articulation workshop. I'll be doing one on peer review. I just want to mention the fact that a partnership can be very vital. It can open doors. It can give you a different clientele of students. When Dr. Wagner in 1998 opened the door for our school to be in partnership with Fuller Theological Seminary, it meant that we became an extension site of Fuller Seminary. Now, whenever our college graduates were getting ready to graduate as seniors from Duke University, and they just spent $120,000 of tuition, mom and dad's tuition money, and they went home to say to their parents, I want to go get trained to do ministry. Parents weren't real inclined to do that, to say, oh, Anon LaJoy, go ahead and do that. But when they said, I'm going to go to the Graduate School Campus Ministry, which is an extension of Fuller Theological Seminary, and I'm going to get 6 Fuller Seminary mission courses and have graduate level credit that can transfer to any master's program that I might enter into in the future, they said, okay. Now, articulation agreements, partnerships bring credibility. And state licensure bring credibility. But you know what else brought credibility to our program? It's not because we had Fuller as a resource of credibility, as a source of credibility. But you know what else we did? Dr. Wagner started the Acea and made available peer reviews that we would volunteer to do peer reviews. And so as a result, I invited Brian Sauter and Ken Malimin to come in to my school 2 years after it got started. And as they went through the curriculum and they went out on the campus and they looked at the internship and they looked at everything we were doing and said that we were going to be doing and measured us as to whether we were doing it or not and decided what we would need to do in order to do it even better, I ended up getting a new administrator out of it. Because they talked to my superiors and said, hey, this guy's program's in place, but it's going to grow. And if you give him the help that he needs, it will grow. And so I got a full-time staff person from my senior superiors. And as a result, our school grew 17 one year, the next year 35, the next year 70, the next year 150. It doubled every year for 4 years. I valued a peer review because a peer review helped me grow my school. I would encourage you, tomorrow. If you're interested at all in hearing about how to conduct a peer review for your school, it's a 2-day process, and I'm going to be doing my seminar on peer review. It's a valuable asset in every way for your school. So tomorrow there's 3 workshops. Before that, we'll have Dr. Steve Crawford on the ups and downs of accreditation, and but we start at 8:30 in the morning with prayer. Kathy will be leading us into that. So.